People are comfort seekers. Whenever you look to an external solution to solve an internal spiritual problem, eventually the external solution will become a bigger problem than the one it was intended to solve.
Welcome back. I'm with the insightful, amazing Ian Cron. You may know him as the co-author of The Road Back to You, famous Enneagram book. He is a prolific author, a therapist. He's also a priest. He is a man who knows a lot of stuff. He has written a book called The Fix, all about the 12 steps, making it accessible in our daily lives. If you are someone whose life hasn't been touched by addiction, I don't know what kind of life you're living, whether we have dealt with our own, whether shopping addiction or substance addiction or love somebody else with an addiction. Addiction does touch our lives. I think we're all a little social media addicted right now. But Ian does something really special with this project where he talks about how the 12 steps can just be a trellis with which we become more emotionally healthy, that it's not about, a group in a basement smoking cigarettes and drinking a bunch of coffee, that it's something really accessible and it's something important for our spiritual growth. I'm excited for you to listen to this show. I think it's a very important show. We even go into what does it look like to love people who are struggling? How do we make sure we are not actually enabling them? So we talk about all sorts of things. And at the end, Ian, of course, gives us some amazing recommendations. Now, without further ado, here is the amazing Ian Cron. Ian, I'm so excited to have you on the show. You are the person who really gave language and understanding to the Enneagram for so many of us. So I remember flying on a plane, reading about the 7 in a way that I had never understood before and crying, going, everything I'm doing in my life is terrible for a 7. There is nothing wrong with me. I'm just a 7. And that's good. So you are, quote unquote, the Enneagram guy. You had tremendous success with that book. You'd written many books, but that was your book as an author that kind of turned your life upside down, right?
It sure did. And, you don't see those things coming. As you know, in the publishing world, that's kind of a unicorn. And yet, what a gift. I mean, I really feel like my life mission is introducing people to ideas and experiences that deepen and improve their lives. And I go to bed at night and I think I'm helping people and I'm getting paid for it. Like I can make a living doing what I love. And so I just feel so grateful for that.
That's great. And there was a bit of a dark side to that success as well, right?
Yeah, there was. In The Fix, I don't go into tremendous detail. I think I give 2 or 3 sentences to describing it. So it's a little more complicated than what's in the book because I just needed to be efficient with words. But 4 years ago, I relapsed after decades of sobriety, but this time on prescription medications, namely Adderall, Xanax, and Klonopin. And after decades of sobriety, my guard was down and I, kind of found myself, now abusing and using those drugs surreptitiously, secretly, until I used them so much it became more of a public problem, as often happens. And went to treatment for a month. And after, now in my 5th year of sobriety, I felt, I think I really want to write about the 12 steps and the difference they've made in my life. But I waited 5 years to talk publicly about that experience in the hope that it will be useful to other people. I will tell you the book is, as you know, is incredibly vulnerable. So I've had many an anxious night, did I go too far? But you know what? I'm 60 something years old and I'm sort of at a point in my life where it's like, if my mission really is to deepen and improve people's lives, that has to include telling the truth about my own life and what I've learned. And that has to be part of my own legacy. So I hope it's going to land and be helpful to people.
Well, I can say, speaking for myself, it lands and it's tremendous, tremendous work. For me as a writer, with each of my books, I have told myself, if my level of vulnerability hasn't made me want to curl up in a fetal position and question my sanity, then I'm not being honest enough.
Yeah. Well, I definitely feel that way about this book. But of course, the book isn't a memoir, right? Like it has, I only tell those parts of my story that would serve as illustrations for what the purpose of the book is, which is to introduce people to the 12 steps as a design for living that anybody can take advantage of and to derive the same benefits that millions of people have enjoyed for the last 90 years. And I just wanted to democratize them. I wanted people to go, oh, wait a minute, this isn't just for quote unquote those people. And by the way, I think we're all quote unquote those people, as you know. And so it's just that some people have addictions that are more public and sometimes have more consequences, but everybody's an addict, as you know from the book.
Well, absolutely. And I think I like your term democratizing it, because everyone is addicted to something. You get such a great layout. I mean, who isn't addicted to social media right now?
Yes.
People of a certain age. There are people who are in physical therapy for their thumbs because of all of the doom scrolling.
Yeah.
Would you give us a little bit of that list, because you do it so well?
Oh gosh, I don't have it right here in front of me.
You can riff in your own way.
Yeah, I mean, look, everybody's looking for a fix. Hence the title of the book, right? It's just how human beings are. We're averse to pain and we're attracted to pleasure or to comfort seeking, right? Soothing. And so we're kind of hardwired for this problem. But, think about it. We have drugs, alcohol, nicotine, sports gambling, porn. And those are like at the high list. But think about things like people pleasing, perfectionism, helping other people in a codependent way, right? Adventure seeking. We could go through the Enneagram and just start pulling out addictions right and left.
Adventure seeking?
I did.
I feel personally attacked.
Right. But I mean, look, people have food addictions. People have, sneaking downstairs at 2 a.m, anxious and eating ice cream, and look, I understand. I get it. I've been there. And yet we know that, yes, these are physiological problems, psychological problems, socio-cultural problems. It's very complicated, but ultimately it's a spiritual problem. And there's a solution. And the solution has been meeting in church basements for 90 years. And I'm just trying to get it upstairs where everybody else lives, right? To say, guess what? There's stuff going on downstairs that if you were tapped into it, you would experience the same benefits that other people have, because you would finally have a program for living. You'd finally have a plan for how to clean up the mess on the inside of your life. And I've experienced that, and I've seen it transform people, including myself, in the most revolutionary of ways. I'm just so stoked to have other people learn about it.
Well, let's talk about getting it out of the basement. What do people who have had no connection to the 12-step program, what do they need to know?
Yeah. And, it's really cool because now, there's all this sober curious stuff. And there's just kind of an openness right now to like, how do I improve my mental health? How do I improve my emotional health? Or what we call in the rooms of recovery, we call emotional sobriety, right? How do I get that, right? So the 12 steps were put together about 90 years ago by a guy named Bill W. He was a hopeless alcoholic stockbroker in New York City. They were derived from a Christian organization called the Oxford Group. Mm-hmm. They were originally 6 steps. Bill turned them into 12. What they did was facilitate a spiritual awakening of sufficient force that it would render our addictions and compulsive behaviors that we use to self-soothe that end up causing us more problems than the ones they solve, that it would just render them unnecessary and would replace them. And I see miracles every single day, in the lives of people who have chosen to follow that path. And yeah, it's available to everyone from, as you know, from the book title, How the 12 Steps Transform People's Lives, whether they're just well-adjusted or down and out. It's for everyone in between too.
Could you give us one of the steps that you feel like everyone, no matter what they're going through, could develop as a practice and a habit in their life?
Oh boy, I could do that with every single one. But I mean, maybe just for the sake of a 50,000 foot view, the 12 steps could be broken down into 1 through 3, which are really about mending your relationship with God as you understand God, right? Then 4 through 7 are really about mending your relationship with yourself, right? 8 and 9 is about mending your relationship with other people's. And then 10 through 12 is how do you develop a lifestyle that supports health and growth in each of those domains of your life going forward, right? Like, how do you just keep your side of the street clean? Well, let's just take step 1, right? We admitted we were powerless over blank and that our lives had become unmanageable. So I just think powerlessness is a superpower. That's been my experience. It's a tremendous paradox, right? When we finally surrender and stop trying to fix ourselves, because we've tried, right? Like, I remember my first sponsor, a sponsor is someone who is kind of your mentor in 12-step communities. He said to me, he said, Ian, we are well past any conversation about you fixing you. Right? You have run out of good ideas, pal. And he was right. I had run out of good ideas. And you just think about some of your compulsive behaviors like that you have tried to get over. You've tried to stop. You've been to therapy. You've been to Tai Chi classes. You've been to retreats, right? And they just dog you. It's like, man, I just want my inner world to be more connected and together than it is. And it begins by saying, I can't do it. In fact, the first 3 steps are this. Step 1, I can't. Step 2, he can, right? God can. And 3 is, I think I'll let him. That's it. I mean, the steps are really simple, by the way. They're not easy, but they're simple, which I love, right? Anybody can get them. And they're wonderful that way. I love that first step, though, because there's this incredible relief that comes over you when you realize I am out of ammo, but there's someone who can help me.
Amen. I think in that first step, what can throw people off is the term powerlessness. I'm powerless against this because, say, someone's addiction is people pleasing.
Yeah.
I think people's own defense mechanisms will pop up and go, well, you're not completely powerless against it. I mean, you maybe have some weakness over here, but you generally keep it under control.
Good.
So
then just stop it.
Yeah. As a therapist, speak to that.
Yeah. Well, just stop it then.
Yeah.
How you doing? Right? I mean,
right.
These are pretty embedded patterns. If you can stop it, then great. You don't have a problem. And if you can stop it and stay stopped, right? No problem. Yeah. So what is an addiction? Let's just talk about that, right? Like, an addiction is really any unhealthy, compulsive relationship you have with a person, a behavior, or a substance that has mood-altering effects and negative consequences.
So it could be shopping.
Hello.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, everybody thinks, this is for alcoholics and drug addicts. It's like, no. There are compulsive shoppers. There are compulsive returners, right? There are people who are addicted to gaming. There are people who are addicted to edibles. They're addicted to television. They're addicted to their phones. They're addicted to success, workaholism. And that people will say to me, well, my life is manageable. Like I have a house, I have a bank account, and I'm doing great. I'm killing it. It's like, okay, well, how about the fact that your partner says to you, please, please, please don't bring work on our vacation this time. Stop looking at your phone. Stop obsessing about how much money you're making. Stop You know what I mean? Like, people are comfort seekers. And unfortunately, like I said, whenever you look to an external solution to solve an internal spiritual problem, eventually the external solution will become a bigger problem than the one it was intended to solve.
Okay, that's some truth right there. Yeah, it's so good. Okay, we went through the first 3. Let's go through the next section. Walk us through those.
Yeah, so 4 through 7 is about self-examination, right? And you do it with compassion, with a non-blaming gaze. It's like, taking inventory in your grocery stores, right? Well, this tomato's good. This one's bad. Got to throw it out. I mean, it's just like owning your stuff. So like step 4 is, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. We just go inside and we take a look around and we make an inventory, like what's not working, A lot of that is through the lens of, our fears. What are they? Because a lot of fear drives and underwrites our addictions a lot of the time. And 5 is admitting to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. So for thousands of years, Christian masters and teachers have been teaching this stuff all the way along, right? This is the 12 steps, just organizes it in a way that just makes it really useful and doable. And then 6 and 7 are really about becoming willing to have God remove all of our defects of character, or I sometimes call them character defenses, and then humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings, which actually, this is so important, this idea, because most people on the spiritual life or path believe that transformation comes as the result of hard work, right? So it's like, and I call that reformation. You know what I'm saying? That's reformation. I'm going to reform myself, right? And those people end up usually becoming pretty miserable because no matter what they do, it's never enough and they can't fix themselves, right? And so when you get to the next step, it's like, well, I have to actually become willing and turn these over to a power greater than myself who can actually remove them for me. Now that's called transformation. In the Christian tradition, that's called grace. Right? It's literally letting God do for you what you cannot do for yourself. And I have seen repeatedly in my own life when I have finally given over my resentments, my fears, my crazy patterns of behavior, when I finally let them go, God just removes them with very little effort on my part. It's really quite stunning. And I think that's how you know that you're in a living relationship with a reliable higher power.
Amen. Amen. That's beautiful. Okay, next section. This is great.
8 and 9, made a list of all people we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all.
Oh, that's not fun.
And then 9 is made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. But this is terribly important, Allie, right? Most of us are very unaware of the amount of resentment and pain we're carrying around because of unfinished work in previous relationships, romantic relationships, family relationships, friendships. How many people do you know that are walking around just angry because of things that have happened in the past that are unresolved? This is about just resolving those things. And again, right out of at least my spiritual tradition, right? Like if you have a problem with somebody and you're at church or in the temple and you have a problem with somebody, immediately leave and go take care of that problem. Yep. And then come back. That's what the teaching is. So it's like, all right, I'm going to make a list of people that I've harmed, and I'm going to own what's mine to own in this situation. I'm not going to go in there with a list of their wrongs and mistakes, right? This is not about arguing. This is just about finding peace for you. In fact, I could have said this, right? 1 through 3 is about finding peace with God. 4 through 7 is finding peace with yourself. And 8 and 9 is finding peace with others. Mm-hmm. And again, it's just like an internal spiritual detox for everybody. It's like, I got to get it together with God, myself, and others. And the 12 steps offer that path.
That's beautiful. Okay, take us home.
All right, 10 through 12. So, 10 is just continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11 is sought through prayer and meditation to make conscious contact with God, to improve our conscious contact with God, asking for only for knowledge of his will and the power to carry that out. And then 12 is having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to others, right? To insert whatever, and to practice these principles in all our affairs, right? So that's just saying, okay, well, going forward, I'm going to protect my relationship with myself, with God, and others. And the way I do it is through these last 3 maintenance steps. I have stories throughout the book that I hope are enjoyable and entertaining and fun, even at times, not just always moving. It's not a glum book, as you know, right? Like the book is honest, it's vulnerable, it's sincere, it has moving moments, but my Irish humor kind of weaves through it too, right? Because I think this is a real joyful journey. It's a hard journey at times, but in the end, it's just so joyful and freeing.
I love the way you have taken it out of the basement. That's what you're doing. Just to hear you explain the 12 steps and how useful and practical they are. And it goes along with almost everything we've been taught in our faith,
Yep. Absolutely.
Trust in the Lord, hand things over to the Lord. I mean, it make amends.
Yes.
Live in peace with people.
Yeah. And live in peace with yourself. I mean, these are promises throughout our sacred texts, right? Through scripture. Like it's everywhere. And all this is doing is organizing it in such a way that you can actually receive those gifts, not manufacture them, but receive those gifts from God and enjoy them, which is your birthright. It's your birthright to enjoy these things. And yet, how many people do I know that just go from one therapist to the next, one spiritual experience to the next thing? Oh, this is it. This is the thing, this explains everything. And it's like, it lasts for 6 weeks or something. And then it joins the heap of other things that they've done in the past. This actually works. And it works. We're talking about the basement. So for people who are confused, it's like most 12-step meetings happen in the basements of churches. And in the book, I actually tell the story of a pastor friend of mine who had a secret alcohol problem. And he showed up to church one Sunday, half in the bag, and started to do his sermon. And the elders figured out that, oh my gosh, this guy's sozzled, And instead of, they ushered him out, and instead of helping him, which is what the right thing to do would have been, they fired him. And I met him in a church basement at a meeting one day, and he said, it's so ironic that I have found more grace, forgiveness, kindness, acceptance, and love in the basement of churches, meeting with other people like me, than I ever did upstairs. And I'm like, then we got to get it upstairs, and like everybody should work a program of 12 steps, and we would be living in a better world if they did.
It's such a wonderful example of partnering with God. It's not self-help. It is a partnership with God to work with him.
Yeah. So my same sponsor, this guy is so funny, man. I got a sponsor. He's from East Tennessee, and he's got like this really great drawl, and he's like really funny and super smart. And he said to me one time, he goes, Ian, 12-step communities are not self-help groups, right? Because if yourself could have helped you by now, wouldn't yourself already have done it? And that's actually Christianity. That's faith, right? Like if yourself could have helped, do you think about what Paul says, right? Why can't I stop doing the things I don't want to do, and I can't do the things I want to do? It's like, well, because yourself is in the way, right? Like you still are giving God directions. Like you are still giving God instructions, right? And that is what is slowing you down on the path. The thing is, you have to surrender. You have to own your unmanageability. Sometimes we call that sin, right? Like, or you just have to manage your brokenness. And it's like, why don't you let God do it?
So it works for, the more serious addictions, alcohol, substances, but the little, like you said, people pleasing, social media, there's so many, shopping, there's so many things that we just can't stop.
Yeah, and they all have mood altering effects.
Yep.
Right? They have mood altering effects, right? We're sad, we're anxious, we're empty, we're lonely, whatever our thing is, right? And that's just baseline for human beings. Like, now sevens may not believe this. However, at our baseline, all human beings have a feeling of not being at home in the world. That is spiritual reality. And it is a bad thing to try and live with spiritual unreality as your partner in life, right? Like we just have to own the fact that life is uncomfortable. And we look for comfort in our distractions, in our substances, in our behaviors. And they end up causing a mess on multiple fronts because people don't just have one addiction. They have multiple addictions, right? Like we're cauldrons of them. And so, and let's just for a moment imagine someone's listening and they're like, I really don't have addictions. It's like, okay, well, would you like to have peace with God, with yourself, and with others? Then work the steps. Okay, don't cop to an addiction, but work the steps and you'll still have a vastly improved life.
Amen to that. Now, say someone's listening and they do love someone who has a serious addiction. You being addiction-informed therapist, put on that hat for a minute, and would you give some encouragement to people that are in that place in life?
Yeah. Well, it sort of depends on who that person is. If it's your partner, it's a little different than a dear friend. Like there's different dynamics. However, I'd say that the best thing you can do first is to take care of you, right? It's very easy to get sucked into the vortex of someone else's addiction problem and try and fix them, and you can't. That person has to come to the realization that they need help, right? Now, you can create the natural conditions in which that person can reach that conclusion by, for example, setting boundaries. Like, well, Dad, you can't be with my grandkids because you're drinking. That's just setting up very appropriate boundary. And you do it with love and with kindness and not with rage and anger. It's just like, I'm just putting a boundary here, and just allow them to experience the negative consequences of their behavior, right? Until you hopefully, doesn't always work, but they just wake up, right? And they go, oh, I have a problem, rather than enabling them. So like I have a child, and I have permission to say this. So I have a son in recovery. I love this kid, man. But he was deep in, right? Went to treatment a couple of times. One of the reasons that he eventually got it was because we said, you just can't live here. And we put him out of the house, and he had no money, no car, no place to live, nothing.
Wow.
And we just waited. We just had to create the environment, the natural environment where he could wake up and see the problem, and you can do that with a workaholic. You can do that with, you know what I mean? Like you can do that not just with people with substance or drinking problems. It's like just setting boundaries with people and saying, I love you. I love you so much that I'm going to have to set some boundaries in this relationship that will alert you to the fact that you need help.
How would you define enabling, and why is enabling so dangerous?
It's very, very, very easy to find yourself in a situation where, in the name of helping the other person, you actually end up enabling their behavior. So like with my son, I don't know how long we spent like funding his life while he tried to find himself, right? Like we just continued to be like, okay, well, we'll pay the rent this month, or we'll pay off the credit card. And like, so you don't have the stress of that and going out and looking for him in the night, you know what I mean? And like driving him home. He never had a jail scenario, right? But it's like, going and picking them up and bailing them out. Sometimes that's enabling, it's like, no, probably should sit there, figure it out, And it's a hard thing to do, particularly with your children, but with anybody. Because in the name of love, you think, okay, I have to be kind. And actually what you're doing is giving them a situation where they can just continue to do what they're doing without any consequences, right? And we just don't want to do that,
Yeah, and I think it is so dangerous because, especially for women, whether they're the mother or the spouse or daughter or a good friend of someone with a serious addiction, the thought I think always comes to mind of, I want to be loving and I want to be forgiving and I want to be gracious and I don't want this person to hurt. And it's a huge shift in the way you're thinking about things to realize sometimes the things that we think we're doing that are loving are actually harming.
So this is why community is such an important part of the equation. It's very hard to do this work for yourself or for others alone. So for example, there are groups like Al-Anon, for example, which is for people who have loved ones with addiction problems.
I went to Al-Anon as a teenager, and it was very helpful to me.
Super helpful, right? Because you realize, okay, I'm not crazy. I'm not alone, right? Other people who have been through the same things I've been through. And what does Al-Anon do? Basically, it says to help the other person, you have to work on yourself first, right? And I love that idea. Like people are always telling me like, oh, how do I fix my marriage? And I'm like, well, let's start with fixing you. Like you can't fix another human being. You cannot control their experience. Like, let's just face it. Every human being has an addiction to control.
That's true.
Right? We want to control other people. And sometimes, like 2s on the Enneagram, I see this a lot, right? They're going to try and control people with just so much love. Mm-hmm. And actually, a lot of times that love is control, masked as love, right? It's like, I'm going to control this person by loving them to death, right? Like, okay. And sometimes it can be very strategically manipulative.
Yeah.
Right?
No, it makes sense.
Everybody has issues around control. And the 12 steps can really help with that by teaching you to let go and letting people have their own lives. And you can live interdependently. But if you get enmeshed in other people's lives and you lose any sense of self in the process, that's trouble.
Yeah, it sounds like the 12 steps would be the fix for that.
Yeah, for sure.
This has been wonderful. Can I ask you some fun questions?
Okay, I hope I can answer them.
I think you can. The first one, I know the answer to because I've read your books, but tell us your Enneagram number.
I am a 4 on the Enneagram. I'm a self-preservation 4, which is the counter type of the 4. So I often look like a 3 or a 7, but I really have the same core motivation as a typical social 4.
I never knew that about a self-preservation. I don't think I've ever met a self-preservation 4.
Here I am.
Yeah, I love that. Self-pres 7 myself. So
nice.
Yeah, we're always making sure we're okay, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. It's a great type.
What about a song that you're enjoying right now?
So there's a song by an Americana country artist named Iris DeMent that I just love. It's called When My Morning Comes Around. It's such a 4 song. It's crazy. But it's so beautiful and heartfelt. And she opens her mouth and like Kentucky falls out. It's just, you know what I mean? Like the rural back hollows of Kentucky. It's so authentic and genuine. There's a song by another Americana artist named Mary Gauthier called Amsterdam that I love. So, oh my gosh, don't ask that question. We're going to be here for hours.
Those are great. Those are great. What about a movie or a TV show that you've enjoyed?
Oh, so I love Slow Horses.
I've heard so many good things about
it. Oh, it's so great.
It's on my list. Okay.
Gary Oldman is just such an amazing actor. I did love The Bear. I will say it was a little, having come from an alcoholic family, but my dad was an alcoholic. And so it was a little triggering, but man, is it really well written and fun to watch. We tend to watch a lot of British television because it's so well written. My family spent 11 years in England, so I sort of have an Anglophile bone in my body that just is drawn to it.
Love that. What about a book that you've told someone else they should read recently?
Oh, there's a beautiful book. The title is This Is Happiness, and it's by a guy named Niall Williams. He's an Irish writer. It's a gorgeous novel. Oh, is it beautiful? Every page is like just word candy. It's just I can't get enough. And on the nonfiction front, recently I just read Arthur Brooks's book, Build the Life You Want.
Fantastic.
Have you read it?
I have. I'm a
super
huge
great
Brooks fan.
Super great. I really, really enjoyed it. And I didn't like the title because I felt like it's sort of like a goofy self-help title for a book that actually, right? It's like,
it took
what?
me so long to read it because of the cheesy title, but
I know.
But it was Arthur Brooks, so I knew it had to be good.
Exactly. And I love Strength to Strength, especially at my age, right? Like, it's like, oh, that helped give me some categories to think about the gifts that I can bring to the world. And in some ways, the fix is the product of what he's talking about there, taking crystallized knowledge or essentially wisdom that you've gained by the time you've reached my age in life and share it with others in a way that will be, useful to them on their journey and save them time. Like I feel like so much of my teaching with the Enneagram, with 12-step stuff is I'm just trying to save people time.
Well, I will say for myself and millions of other people, you do that really, really well.
Well,
you've changed so many lives with your work. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, now one more fun question.
Yeah.
A product, something you've told a friend they needed to try. Could be anything.
A product they have to try. All right. Well, the very first thing that comes to my mind is something mostly people have, but whoever invented the magic bullet should really get the Nobel Prize. I love every time I use my magic bullet, I'm like, who did this? who thought this up? This is genius. I'm making my little juicy thing, and it's like, I don't know, it's so simple and obvious, but man, oh man, that is genius.
You can't beat the magic bullet.
You can't beat the magic bullet. Who came up with that? Like, okay, we're just going to put 4 blades inside. It's like, really? Like, that's easy cleanup, easy everything, man. I can just drink it right out of the cup. I love it. It's my daily lunch is out of the magic bullet.
I love it. Now, we will link to all of your sites, but tell everyone really quickly why they need this book.
Well, man, if I haven't made the case by now, I'm really up the creek. Look, all of us are looking for peace with God, with ourselves, and with other people, and a program or a rule of life, right? Like to borrow John Mark Comer's illustration, right? Like a trellis. We need something on which we can grow our inner world, right? A structure. And if you're ready to do the work, if you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, right? Then the 12 steps can produce in you the spiritual life that you ache for. It's not easy, but it's simple. And if you can find a community in which to do it with, all the better. In life, everybody, we tend to get sick alone and we get better together. So community is important. We all need it in order to find the highest expression of ourselves.
So good. Thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been great.
Such a pleasure. Thank you.
How fantastic was that, right? If you're like me, you feel a little attacked and a little convicted, but hopeful and good. And I love having this tool in our toolbox so we can continue to build our emotional health. Now, if you like this episode, please share it. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure you're subscribed, like it, leave a comment, and you'll be entered to win. If you are listening on the podcast, take a screenshot, share it on a Facebook story or Instagram story, tag me, tag Ian, and you will be entered to win this amazing book that you will want to read, that you will want to share with people, and let it be a great resource in your life. I'm glad that you're here. I love the way you work on yourself. I love the way you show up for yourself. I love the way you invest, because a healthy you, physically, emotionally, spiritually, it benefits everyone in your life. Because we talked about this a little bit today, we need to be self-aware. We need to be healthy. It is one of the ways we love other people, because if we are not healthy, we can do a lot of damage accidentally. I believe in what's inside of you. I believe in your dreams. I believe that you are getting stronger every day. I believe that you're leaning into the Lord and He is giving you wisdom and strength and discernment, and you are making an impact on this world for good. That's why you're here, learning something little by little that helps you live the life that He has called you to live. Because God has created you to stand strong and bring something special and unique to this world that only you can bring. So keep showing up, keep stepping up, keep loving well, because you cannot break a woman who gets her strength from God. I hope you have a great day, and I'll be back with you soon. Was I recording? I was recording. We did it. We're done. And cut.